He also has dyslexia. He's a famous sculptor. Many of his works have been shown in museums nationwide. And he is CEO of Globe Runner. So we're very proud to have him as our speaker this evening.
Okay, should I try the mic? Does that work?
Sounds good.
Is that helpful?
Thank you.
All right, great. So this is a participatory talk, okay? Particularly for my youngsters in the room. Every time you guys see this slide, I want you to say it with me, okay? So let's say it right now. See it, say it, believe it, do it. Every time you see it, I want you to say it with me, okay? Okay, so I want to get started. I'll tell you my story. So Mrs. Lee talked about some of the things I'm doing today, but it wasn't always that easy. So I am a severely dyslexic person to this day, and I remember early on having a lot of challenges in school. And so this is a picture of me when I was around 5, which is about the time that I was identified. And you know, my parents were very proactive, and they tried to get me in all the right places and all the right schools. But early on, we didn't really know what to do. So I remember my first grade teacher being just overwhelmed with how to teach me. And the way that she presented information was certainly not a way that was effective for me to learn. I remember one day that the way that she thought she could motivate me was like physically shaking me as hard as possible to get it to soak into my brain. You know, I was terrified of her, and I was terrified of the classroom. And I remember spending the majority of my early childhood just in my own shell, in my own mind, kind of coming up with, you know, creative visions of something that I found interesting. But my participation level in the classroom was basically 0 for a really long time. And, you know, I felt out of control. This is a sculpture that I did that just kind of talked about that feeling of being out of control. It's called Collision of a Fourth Grader. I remember 4th grade being a particularly challenging year. It's a transition to a new school. And it's a desk that seems to have collided with the wall. And if you think about it, that's how we as dyslexics feel in school. We're out of control. We're in an environment where it's not built for our success. And you're in such a wonderful situation where you do have teachers that are organizing events like this, that we're working actively to improve that environment. But in most cases, the school environment is not built for the dyslexic mind. Now that's not the fault of the dyslexic child, that's the fault of the school environment. And so that's what we're here to change. Slowly, gradually, every year it gets a little bit better. Teachers get more and more involved. But when I was going to school, it was really rough because it was a visual learner's world. And every single assignment that you were given, no matter what class you were in, was given to you in a written format. And the output expected was in a written format, which was one of the biggest challenges. I related it basically to torture. So this is my other version of a school desk called Sitting Pretty. You can see I just love that school desk. I remember, so back in, it was actually that 4th, 5th grade year, my parents brought me to a new school, and I went to the Shelton School here locally, and they decided that it would be a good idea for me to do summer school. And so they signed me up for summer school, and they wanted to do intensive Orton Gillingham-based reading therapy, language-based therapy, which essentially was a very miserable experience for me to do. And so to balance out this half day of torture, they decided that they would put me in art class for the other half of the day. But unfortunately, right before we started the semester of summer school, I broke my right arm very badly. And I couldn't move my hand at all. I mean, I could just barely wiggle my fingers. I couldn't hold a pencil. I certainly couldn't hold a paintbrush. I couldn't do any of the, you know, sculpture projects that the art teacher wanted me to do. And I remember being very disappointed. And so I sat in the back of the class and didn't do anything. And so that first day when I was sitting in the back of the class, her name was Mary Dallas, the art teacher Mary Dallas. She came up to me and she said, "Eric, what are you doing?" I said, "Well, I broke my arm, I can't do anything." And she said, "Eric, what do you think people who have disabilities do, like physical disabilities. Do you think that they do art? I said, well, no, I certainly don't think that they can. If they have a really profound physical disability, how in the world could they do art? And she said, well, in fact, there are people who have really severe physical disabilities that learn to overcome them and do fine art. And she says, I know of people that don't have any hands that can do realistic portraits. I know of people that use their mouth to hold a paintbrush. I personally now, as an adult, have met a woman who uses her elbows to hold a paintbrush, and she does photographic paintings. It's amazing. Or with their feet. And so for the rest of that semester, that's exactly what we did. So she said, we're going to do that. We're not going to use our hands at all for the rest of this semester. We're going to do art without using our hands. And it was one of these life lessons that really sunk in right there. And it took years and years to kind of reiterate itself. But I kept coming back to it, that just because I had a broken arm didn't mean I couldn't do art. And the same thing was true in life. Being dyslexic wasn't going to stop me from succeeding in life. There was going to be a different way that I was going to be successful. I was going to have to rely on my strengths, the things that I could do. In art class, I had the most fun that semester. I did the most creative projects, and the other kids thought it was really cool too. I had them wanting to do it. We were doing foot paintings and all sorts of cool stuff. And the whole class was like, that's so cool, we want to do that. It's a fantastic life lesson that I think can be applied over and over and over again. There's always a different way, and often that different way is a better way of doing things. So, what are we going to do with our lives? See it, say it, believe it, do it. Okay. So your difference is your strength. This is really what I've come to learn and realize in life is your difference is your strength. The things that we commonly associate with being our negatives are actually some of our most positives. Okay, so in business today, I do what? I lead people, right? So I lead others to accomplish more than I could physically accomplish myself. I manage a team of people. We have about 20 employees, and we all work together to accomplish big goals. How do I do that? By effectively delegating. Where did I learn to effectively delegate? In the classroom when I needed to find a teacher or a peer who could help me because I couldn't read well, right? I'm awesome at finding great people around me who can support the things that I'm weak at because I've done it since I was 5 years old. I have a competitive advantage against every other entrepreneur who didn't have that great lesson in life that I got. My greatest weakness is my greatest strength. 35% of entrepreneurs self-identify as having a learning difference versus 10% of the population. That means that entrepreneurs are 3.5 times more likely to be LD than the rest of the population. Isn't that a cool statistic? I just love that. And it plays out. I know I'm on the board of an organization called Entrepreneurs Organization, and to be in this organization you have to own your own company, and it has to do a certain amount of revenue, it has to be successful. And I have met a lot of incredibly cool entrepreneurs, and many of them are dyslexic or have ADD, and it's a conversation starter for me more often than not. You know, we are not broken. This is the message I want you to hear today. We are not broken. We are your future artists, your future athletes, actors, entrepreneurs, mathematicians, engineers, inventors, and leaders. The kids in this classroom, audience hall, whatever you want to call this place that we're in, they are these people, right? And the adults that are probably dyslexic themselves, you are these people too. And you know it. You know that these things that we've all struggled with are honestly our biggest strengths. It's just a matter of seeing it. And right now in the classroom environment, as I expressed at the beginning, it's a challenging environment. So that's why we have to talk about this and figure out how to be successful in that environment. You guys see it on your tables already. We've got lots of examples of famous people throughout history, you know, from Alexander Graham Bell to, you know, Leonardo da Vinci, to Patton. I mean, all sorts of incredibly successful people who are dyslexic. And there's lots of examples in all of these posters. So I don't think there's a big mystery there. One of the things I want to talk about tonight, and the reason we keep talking about seeing it, saying it, believing it, and doing it, is this idea of setting goals. I really believe in goals. I believe in visioning where we're going. This is something I've gotten much, much better at over the last few years, and it's something I wish I had done when I was younger. Because I remember when I was younger, it took me a long time to figure out goal setting. But once I figured out how to get a goal achieved, it's been a real asset in my life. So I really want to think about that idea of goal setting leading to success. And they can be big goals and small goals. So, a small goal might be, you know what, I'm going to save up my allowance for the next month so I can buy this awesome Rockstar toy, right? It's a cool small goal. It's simple, it's direct. Hold your questions. This is my son over here. All three of these are mine. Or it could be a big goal, right? It could be a big goal like I'm going to go do martial arts and I'm going to get a black belt, or I'm going to go to college, or I want to go to grad school, or I want to start my own business. So big goals and small goals. And sometimes a big goal is intimidating, right? Man, how do I get all the way to college from where I am today? Well, maybe we start with, I'm going to work on excelling in my math class today, right? That's my small goal for today. I'll skip the small goals and talk about some of the bigger goals in my life. So, early on, college was a big one. I said, I really want to go to college. I want to be successful in that environment. And I did that, and I really actually enjoyed college. And I remember having this epiphany that for the first time a classroom was built for my skill set, right? Because the Socratic method was encouraged, and we said, let's discuss ideas in an open and honest format. And whoa, that's a huge deal, right? And for a dyslexic, if we can open our mouth, oh, watch out, right? This is an exciting time. So I remember college being a wonderful experience. I met my lovely wife, which worked out quite well. So, I remember that being good. And so then I thought, okay, well, this went so well. I love college so much, I'm going to just keep doing this, and I'm going to go to grad school. So I went to UNT for grad school, but to do that, to be successful, I had to crack the whole book thing, right? So I kind of breezed over this at the beginning, but when I say I'm severely dyslexic, I'm not kidding. I still don't read with my eyes today. I read a little bit, maybe at a 3rd grade level today, right? So for me, fluency is something I never achieved with ear or with eye reading. And so I've decided, and not just me, but a lot of us have decided to break up this notion of reading and kind of challenge that entire concept. A blind person, can they read? Anybody? Yes, and how do they read? With Braille, that would be the deaf person. But yeah, with Braille, right? They learn to read with Braille. And is that reading just as good as eye reading? Is the information gathering equivalent and equal? Yes, right? 100%. So let's think about this a little bit differently. I talk about it in terms of ear reading. So I'm a very, very good ear reader. In fact, I've probably read more books than most people in this room because I am an avid ear reader and I ear read like all the time. And I just consume books. I probably read 3 books a month on average. So I consume a lot of books. And I switch up, I'll read business books, I'll read fantasy fun books. I just read whatever suits my preference at the time. But I love consuming information. I've also learned that I can use technology to ear read with my computer, which allows me to do email communications, consume articles, read the news, whatever I want. And so this idea of ear reading, because we live in today's world, is very smooth. We can easily ear read everything that we can eye read. And we have tools and access to that. Bookshare is here today, which is a fantastic organization that allows textbooks to be put into an audio format and made available for students. Highly encourage you guys to get accounts set up. Your school pays for your account already, so you have an account with the school. And then individual accounts are something that I would consider as well if you're an avid user of Bookshare. I think an individual account is worth signing up for. That way it travels with you from school to school and throughout the life, instead of losing when you leave the school and then kind of going, well, what do we do now? So highly worth it. So I mentioned grad school. So when I did go to grad school, I found it a little challenging because at the time I didn't have the technological advantages that I do today to get audio materials. And so I'll tell you guys a little story. So I remember signing up for this first class, first semester, and I was supposed to take a very challenging upper level art history course. And the professor assigned immense amounts of reading. I mean, he literally wanted you to consume an entire book every week. It was pretty intense. And so the problem was, I would go to Disability Support Services and I would say, can I have these books read on tape? And they, of course, were legally required to accommodate me, would say, yes, sure, we'll read them on tape. They'd give them to a volunteer, and then, remember, the assignment's due in 1 week. 2 weeks later, I would get my book on tape, a week after the assignment was done. Didn't do me very much good a week after the assignment was done. So instantly, I'm failing this class. And a few months pass, and I'm getting deeper and deeper and deeper in the hole. The professor thinks I'm a slacker, and he doesn't believe dyslexia exists. He thinks that that is a word for slacker. And so I remember really struggling and becoming very angry. By the way I got through that eventually, I went back to Disability Support Services and advocated for my rights. And so the counselor that I was working with decided the easiest way to get me the accommodation I needed was to fudge on my paperwork and say that I was a blind student. So once I got into the blind student program, I got paid readers, I got my books read on time. Blind students have better funding. Okay. Just a little nugget I learned every time. But I really got upset and angry, and so I started doing work in my sculpture practice that was very emotionally charged. And this is one of the pieces I did that was called Sisyphus, that illustrated a man that was just tied down, that couldn't make it forward in life, that someone else was controlling his destiny. And my professor at the time, he asked me, he said, why is it that you're so angry? Why do I see all this anger coming out of your artwork? And so I told him the story, and he said, man, I'd love to see that in your sculpture. I'd love to see something that's more direct and more personal. So I'll get to what I did in a minute, but I first want to go a little deeper in this. So we think about these places that we get to as a kid, particularly, feeling isolated and alone. This is a very lonely time, right? It's a time where things can seem overwhelming. And as a parent, this is a real opportunity to step in and help, right? And as a teacher, it's an opportunity to step in and help. But it's also the responsibility of the individual. Whether I'm 5 years old or 55 years old, it's also our responsibility. But the more aware we are, and the more we're in conversation with others, I think the better it is. So I remember feeling isolated and alone, particularly in this time period. And as a younger kid, I remember feeling bullied because I was different, right? And that's it's a challenging thing, and I think it's worth bringing up here. So to get through that, when I was younger, to get out of that, I looked for confidence building things. And my parents did a great job kind of pushing me into confidence building things. So I highly encourage you to look for things that draw out your strengths. So one thing that I love to do is drama. Drama was great for me. I never could memorize lines very well, but I had a good stage presence. So I loved doing it. I got to be the Phantom in the Phantom of the Opera, which was really fun. I remember the music teacher said I didn't really sing, but I chanted with authority. And then martial arts was the other big area. I started doing martial arts when I was 15. This is a photo when I got my black belt. And that was a huge confidence boost for me. That really helped me feel much more confident in life and had goals along the way that I was achieving, right? So whatever it is, I would highly encourage you to look for that. One thing that I would point out, a lot of my dyslexic or ADD entrepreneur friends who I talk to, many of them excelled in individual sports. I think it's kind of interesting. A lot, the individual sport seems to be a common thread that I've picked up on. I don't have scientific backing behind that. I don't have a study on it, but just be aware of it. I have another good buddy, dyslexic, ADD. He was like, you know, right next to pro tennis player, right? So went to a college scholarship on a college scholarship on tennis. Actually, 2 of my AD friends did tennis scholarships. Think about it. So really interesting, that individual sports connection, and I ended up doing martial arts. So what are we going to do? See it, say it, believe it, do it. That's right. Let's get to this idea of grit. How do we achieve it? How do we see it, say it, believe it, do it? We have grit. So one thing that we will learn, being dyslexics, is this idea of grit. This idea of overcoming a challenge. It is in our DNA and necessary for our survival to learn how to overcome challenges. And this is a great study. So Dr. Duckworth did this study. It's a long-term study where she studied lots and lots of people and looked at all sorts of different factors. And grit was one of those factors. And she didn't know the outcome when she started this study, but what came out of it, she determined that grit was a better determiner of lifelong success and happiness than IQ, family income, or any other factor. That's pretty amazing. That's pretty amazing. Think about this idea of having resilient and gritty kids. Those kids are going to be really successful. And I'll get to an idea of how we teach that in a second. So this is the piece that I did after my professor had a chat with me and said I'd like to see something more personal. So this is Repetition of Unreadable Books. It's 98 books cast in concrete blocks. It's a library of unreadable information. It's a view into my world of a cemetery of books, if you will. I did a whole series of work on this subject, and this is how I essentially launched my career as an artist. This one's called Outside the Box. I think that describes a lot of us in this room. This one's Access Denied. Books in stainless steel cages. This one, Integrated Notions, is a kind of a cool story. So we have a very LD family, and to illustrate that point, my wife, we met in college, and we met at basically the Disability Support Services, which was called the Jones Learning Center. And when we met, we both had learning differences. So I was dyslexic, and she had dyscalculia, which is the math version of dyslexia. So together we kind of made one whole learner, if you will. So she brought me this calculus book. It was this giant, beautiful red calculus book. She brought me this one day. She got it at Half Price Books, and this was after we were already married and stuff. And she brought it home, and I was like, "You're out of school. Why is it that you bought a calculus book?" And she's like, "Eric, I want you to lock this book up so no one can read it again. Put it in a sculpture." And so that's exactly what I did. So the book, I love calculus, so the book kind of expressed itself and kind of came to life. And this was also the time that technology started to change in such a way that made it easier for me to access information. You know, we're looking at 2005 and things are getting better, right? And we're starting to have a lot more tools and ability for me to be able to perform on an equal playing field with, you know, quote unquote, normal learners, because now I had the tools I needed to be successful. This is just another illustration of a precarious seat to sit in. And then this public art is another thing I've kind of taken to recently, or not just recently, but starting in 2007, I started doing public art, which allowed me at the time to be a full-time artist. This is a piece I did for Fire Station number 8 in Fort Worth. It's still there, you can go drive by it if you want to see it. And then I put this in. This actually is a piece I installed last week for the city of Addison. The Addison Harbor Foundation commissioned me to do a sculpture at the intersection of Wiley Post Avenue and Wright Brothers Drive. And so this is an intersection of the planes. And it's hard to see in this photo, but this is actually little tiny planes that are built to make this larger plane. And so I took the Wiley Post, the plane that Wiley Post flew, cast 230 of them in aluminum and welded together a larger Wright Brothers flyer. So, hold on 1 second. So what are we going to do to achieve things?
See it, say it, believe it, do it.
Thank you. Yes. So one of the things that we can do to make sure that happens is this idea of growth mindset. So I said I'd tell you how to teach grit. This is one of the best ways to teach grit. Teach this idea of growth mindset. Think about the language that you use with your kids, and think about the mind expanding and always being better, right? So the mind is not static, it is not fixed. That's why standardized testing is a terrible measure of our performance. I think everybody believes that. An IQ test does not represent who I am. I have the ability to learn and grow every day. So this idea of growth mindset means that I can always be better. I can always get up and do it again better. If I believe that my intelligence level and my ability and aptitude is fixed, when I fail, I will stop. Because there's no reason for me to think that I'll get a different result. But if I have the understanding that my mind and my aptitude can improve with time, with practice, a failure is just an opportunity to do better next time, right? I think any great entrepreneur will tell you that, and you hear about that in every Silicon Valley success story, is about the 5 startups they had before they hit it big, right? I'm an entrepreneur. That means that I've got bodies in, startups that didn't work out before this one that has worked out, right? So this idea of growth mindset, I can't emphasize enough. And so simplicity's saying, I think I can, I think I can, I think I can. So I'll wrap up with just a couple more points. A goal without a plan is a wish. Don't just have a big idea. Figure out how you're going to get there. We talked about small goals. This is for my kids in the room. Think about all the small steps that you're going to accomplish to get your big goal accomplished. We talked about saving your money for a couple weeks to get a toy. It's about making good decisions for a couple weeks and not buying a stick of bubble gum when you want it, because you know that you need to save your money because you want to make sure that you get this whatever it is you're going to buy, a new bicycle, whatever. Just wanted to show you guys, this is my company that I run. It's called Globe Runner, and we do digital marketing. It's kind of ironic because a lot of what we do revolves around search, which is based on the keywords that people type into a search engine, and we optimize businesses for better results on that. It's very word-focused business. I don't know how I decided to get into it, but I really do enjoy it. I'll tell you why I enjoy it. It's extremely logical. It's all based on mathematical algorithms, and that's an area that I feel really comfortable, and so I've really enjoyed that business. But the thing that I really enjoy about it is building and nurturing and growing the people around me and making sure they're successful. The more I empower them to be successful, the more I'm successful as part of that. This is a photo of our team. So what are we going to do to achieve our goals?
See it, say it, believe it, do it.
That's right. So I want to tell you about a resource here locally for all of you guys. This is a free resource that is probably one of the most important things that you can sign up for right now. I have no bias in this at all. I'm only the co-founder. But I'm sure everything about it is for the community. So Stand Up LD is a nonprofit organization that is intended to educate parents and teachers and inspire kids. That's why I came out here to speak tonight. This is a Stand Up LD program. We bring free programming into schools to help people and inspire people. That's why we're here. We have a conference that I want you to mark your calendars right now. February 25th, we have a conference coming up. It'll be at the Frisco Rough Riders Stadium. It's going to be an awesome event. We'll have Bookshare, I'm sure, is going to be there with a booth. We'll have probably about 1,000 people there. We have the entire Rough Riders Stadium to ourselves. We'll get to play on the field. There'll be bounce houses. We'll have education for parents. and inspiration for kids. It'll be an awesome event. This is the second annual conference that we've done, and the first one was awesome, and we're excited about this one. This is our program. So this is the stuff that we do. If you want to get involved in any of this, go to standupld.org, fill out the contact form, just say, hey, I'm interested, and we'll get you plugged in. So we have parent meetings that parents can get together, share war stories, get support from each other. We have in-school inspirational talks for students, which is essentially what this is an extension of that. We offer bilingual programming, so we have inspirational talks that are delivered in Spanish. We have youth and teen peer-to-peer groups that we're organizing, and I've got one of my young men right here that's involved in that. And we're mentoring some teens to be future leaders of the movement. And then we've also got some younger kids that are participating and getting the opportunity to be mentored. And we do fun exercises and art projects and things with them. And then we have the annual conference. So this is just a few photos from our group. This is from last year's conference, the soapbox project, when the kids got to decorate a soapbox with their own personal journey and then stand up on the box and tell their story. One of the most moving things I've done. I really enjoy that. This is one of the teen leaders standing up on stage telling her story to an audience of 250 people. And she had a line of kids. We had like 100 kids to do this. And this is 2 weeks ago. We did the teen group met, and you can see there are some younger kids, but mostly teens. And we did a visioning exercise that reinforced kind of my message for this year, which is see it, say it, believe, and do it. And so I encourage you, go home. Since you guys didn't get to attend that teen night with us, go home with your kids. Talk about this presentation that I did, and talk about setting goals. Talk about where you're going to go, how you're going to be successful this year in school, and where you're going to go long term. Maybe your dreams for one day being a doctor, lawyer, dentist, entrepreneur, engineer, visionary, whatever you're going to do. And do a vision board. Visualize it. Make it something that you can see, right? See it, say it, believe it, do it. I'll end with this slide. So this is my family, most of whom are here tonight except for my youngest girl who wouldn't have the patience to be here. I stand up here and I do these talks for these kids. So I've got 3 dyslexic boys. The girl hasn't been tested yet. A wife with LD, and of course I'm very dyslexic. But I do this because I care deeply about these kids and your kids and this whole community. And I want us all to thrive. And I know that we have the potential to go be the future leaders of America. Thank you.